One night in Argentina, 3 girls were relaxing on a boat. Suddenly, the sky darkened, the northern lights appeared on the horizon, and the sea began to churn. One of the girls went to check the GPS, but it wasn't working. At that moment, another girl fell, and her friend tried to help, but the door slammed shut from a gust of wind. Looking through the window, she saw that both girls were dead. Meanwhile, in the city, 3 men, Russo, Juan, and Omar, were heading to their weekly card game at Tano's house. Protests blocked the road, and they had to find a detour. Tano was happy to see his old friends, but he was upset that Russo had brought his son-in-law, Omar. They sat down to play cards, and Lucas joined them, but Omar stayed apart, and Tano became annoyed when he touched his things. It started to rain, the electricity went out, and they discovered that all their phones were dead. Tano's flashlight wasn't working either, so they had to light an old gas lamp. Suddenly, strange sounds were heard, and Tano's wife, Anna, reported that she had seen the neighbor fall in the street. Looking out the window, they noticed snow, which was rare in Buenos Aires, especially in the summer. The snow resembled ash. Anna didn't allow Tano to go outside, fearing the toxicity of the air. When cars started crashing outside, the men tried to use the landline phone, but it was dead too. Tension grew in the house, and Tano ordered the windows and gaps to be sealed. Russo touched the glass and realized it was frozen. The conversation escalated into an argument. Russo tried to leave, pushing Lucas away, but he only took a few steps, and collapsed dead in the street. Tano blamed Omar for this, and they barely managed to break up their fight. Hours passed. It was getting colder, and the men started bundling up. Suddenly, someone knocked on the garage door, and a woman was shouting from outside. Tano suspected a trap, but the others convinced him to help. With a gun in hand, he and Juan went to open the door. A woman named Inga entered, and Anna began to take care of her. Meanwhile, Tano and Juan reached the car through the garage. There was a hole in the ceiling, and snow was falling right into the office. Juan, covered in plastic, sneaked inside, grabbed the keys, and returned. Tano noticed that the snow on the ground was changing color. They tried to start the cars, but without success. Soon, they saw that the neighbor was still alive. They tried to gesture for him to stop, but he looked out the window and immediately died. The same happened to his wife. Juan decided to save his family. The others helped him wrap up in clothes and plastic, and Tano offered an old protective mask. Juan refused the gun, but before he left, Omar grabbed the weapon, demanding the mask. Tano quickly disarmed him, reminding him who was in charge. Juan left and confirmed that the protection worked. The snow didn't kill him. Walking through the city, he saw hundreds of dead bodies, both people and animals. All of Buenos Aires was buried under the ominous snow. In a flashback, the residents of the house were gathered for a meeting before the snowfall. Suddenly, the electricity went out, and a car crashed into the main entrance. No one was hurt, but when one of the men went outside to check on the driver, he immediately died. In the present, Juan continued walking through the city, finding bodies everywhere. He heard a whistle but couldn't identify its source. Soon, he noticed a strange person behind him, and ran until he lost sight of them. Then he found a station with a frozen train. Everyone who tried to leave had died, but there were survivors inside. Juan entered, explained that he couldn't help, and while opening a bag for water, found the gun that Tano had left. He gave the water and left. Later, Juan reached the house with a car at the entrance. As he climbed the stairs, he encountered survivors. Some were praying, others arguing. In his ex-wife's apartment, he found a thief, and pressing him against the wall, demanded to know where his daughter was. Hearing the screams, the neighbors burst in and asked how he had survived. Juan noticed snow on his bare arm, but it didn't burn. Then Elena appeared, kicked the others out, and said that their daughter Clara was at a friend's house, but they hadn't heard from her since. Elena broke down with guilt, and Juan tried to comfort her. She didn't know the friend's address, just the name, and Juan decided to go to the school to find more information. When he tried to leave, the neighbors blocked his path. He explained that the snow was safe after it had fallen, as long as the whole body was covered, but they demanded he show them the mask. So, Juan pulled out the gun. They let him pass, but soon a chase started behind them. Elena asked a neighbor for help, but she slammed the door. Together, they hid in an empty apartment, barricaded themselves, and found a body in the bathroom. Elena began putting on several layers of clothing. When the neighbors started banging on the door, Juan opened fire. He then put a mask on Elena, and sent her to the school. She jumped out of the window and survived, landing on a car. The neighbors broke in, and Juan smashed the window, covering his head with a bag to scare them off with the snow. He jumped out too, but lost consciousness. Meanwhile, at Tano's house, Anna wanted to make tea, but Tano forbade using the tap water, saying it could be contaminated. The men were sealing the windows and boarding them up. Inga, who was holding Tano's gun, admitted that she had served in the army. He returned the weapon, and Inga said she was leaving. Tano stopped her and said that he would go first, putting on the makeshift mask he had prepared. He took her bike and noticed that the regular flashlight wasn't working, but the one that ran on pedals turned on. He deduced that only old devices worked, confirming it by connecting the record player to the battery. After that, everyone put on their homemade masks and headed to the fire station, where they found gear and masks. Juan woke up in a trench and saw a flash of red light in the sky. It turned out that it was a dream. He was awakened. Elena had found their friends, and they came back for him in a truck. Tano informed them that only old engines were working. In a flashback, it showed how Inga, before the snowfall, saw a delivery notification from her brother on her phone. Since he was playing soccer, she volunteered to do the delivery, and that's what saved her life. The group gathered again at Tano's house. He connected the radio to the car battery, but no one responded, no matter which frequency he tried. A dispute began. Juan wanted to take the car and go after his daughter, but Tano disagreed, believing they needed to stick together. At that moment, a man wearing a welding mask entered the garage. It was their neighbor, Benito. He asked for the car, wanting to take supplies to others along with his friend Roberto. Tano refused. While they were arguing, Omar took the opportunity, got behind the wheel, and drove off. Soon after, Benito left, as well. Tano admitted that he didn't trust Roberto, as they had had a quarrel. Omar was driving through the city when he saw a red light in the sky. He got distracted, and unable to avoid the cars blocking the street, he crashed into a store. Meanwhile, Juan and Elena equipped themselves and went out in search of their daughter. The first car they tried didn't start. Then a truck with survivors passed by, and they hid until it drove away. The people in the truck found Omar and pulled him out. Juan and Elena spent the night in the car. At Tano's house, everyone could hear the sound of thieves breaking into the neighboring stores. He continued trying to contact someone via the radio, but it was futile. In the morning, the couple made their way to the school and climbed inside through a window. Elena was searching for the address of her daughter's friend, while Juan went in search of a car that would start. He entered the security booth, took the keys, and heard a familiar whistle. A vision flashed before his eyes again. A red light, destruction, an explosion. He woke up, finding himself in a running car. Meanwhile, Elena found a boy named Pablo, locked in a closet by his friends as a prank. Juan helped him get out, but hit him for his rudeness. They tried to explain the situation to him, but Pablo ran off. He only stopped when he saw the bodies of his friends on the street. He knew where Clara's friend lived and promised to guide them if they took him home. When they reached the house, they found many dead bodies in the garden. Clara wasn't there. Pablo recognized the place. It was his house. Among the dead was his family. The boy started a run of fever, and they stopped at a pharmacy to get medicine. While Juan and Elena were searching the store, a pregnant woman came to the door, saying she was in labor. Despite Juan's warnings, Elena let her in. It was a trap. The woman struck Elena, and her armed companion took the bag and car keys. They locked the couple in the closet. As the thieves left, Elena asked Juan if his visions had started again. He admitted that they had returned with the snow. Pablo didn't want to open the door and was angry at Juan, but he agreed after Elena spoke to him gently. They gave him Clara's mask and went outside together. When Juan noticed movement, he prepared to shoot, but it turned out to be a family driving away in a car. At the station, he boarded the train, but there was no one inside. All the survivors were gone. Inga returned to Tano's house after searching for her brother. She found him dead in the park. She also mentioned hearing strange sounds, but saw no one. Tano gave her a gun and told her to guard the house while he and Lucas went for supplies. They returned to the fire station, but Benito and his men were already there. Benito suggested blocking all the roads, but Tano disagreed. He also demanded permission to use Tano's garage and gave them 24 hours to decide. Later, at home, they intercepted a radio signal. A man from Uruguay reported that the snowstorm had reached them, and similar reports had come from Brazil. It became clear that the catastrophe was global. The signal was cut off. In an attempt to catch a signal from Brazil, Tano climbed onto the roof to adjust the antenna, but he noticed that his compass wasn't working. In the workshop, he checked the others, and they all showed nonsense. Later, Juan and Elena returned with Pablo. Tano said he wanted to leave for the house on the island. He shared his suspicions. The Earth's magnetic field was disturbed, and the world had literally broken down. Juan was still determined to find his daughter, and they argued. Tano abruptly declared that Clara was dead, and Juan simply refused to accept it. Meanwhile, at the gas station, the pregnant woman and her boyfriend were collecting fuel and food. The man heard a noise and shone his flashlight on the snowdrifts. Something moved. The car shook. The boyfriend disappeared. The woman's side window shattered, she screamed, and the car rolled off the hill and crashed. In the tunnel, someone in a yellow suit was walking briskly. In the distance, other people could be seen entering the tunnel. At Tano's house, the group buried Russo. Later, Tano and Lucas went to the store for supplies. Juan insisted on searching for his daughter. Ana remembered the discarded phone directories. They retrieved them from the trash, and Juan finally found the address he was looking for. He decided to go on foot, but Tano changed his mind. He felt guilty and decided to help. He announced they would find Clara and then go to the island together. On the road, Tano explained his theory. The ring of radioactive particles around Earth had been destroyed, causing the snow. The roads were blocked with cars. Suddenly, they heard a rumble in the distance, and military vehicles appeared. One of the soldiers ordered them not to approach the center. There was a lockdown and danger. He also mentioned that a base was being set up and help was on the way. His behavior raised suspicion, and Juan and Tano decided to follow the convoy. After passing through the tunnel, they reached the city center, where the soldiers opened fire on them. The car reversed, but the way was blocked by an overturned bus. They moved forward and passed by the soldiers, only to see what they were shooting at. The bridge was teeming with giant beetles throwing cars, and the army was powerless. A man appeared in the middle of the road. While dodging, Juan lost control of the car, and it skidded. At that moment, he saw the red light and Clara again. The car crashed into a garage and stopped. Juan watched as the beetles descended from the bridge, attacking the soldiers. Their tentacles wrapped around the bodies and pulled them into something resembling a web. Tano pulled Juan out of the car, and they ran upwards, passing by the beetles already breaking down the garage gates. As they ran, Juan was once again overwhelmed. Flashes of red light, images of death and destruction. They took refuge on the roof, hid, and waited for the beetles and soldiers to disappear. Afterward, they picked up weapons and moved on. When one of the beetles dragged a person wrapped in a cocoon toward the new nests, they hid and watched. During their movement, Tano accidentally hit a trash can, and the sound attracted a beetle. Juan opened fire, but Tano's gun jammed. Juan expertly shot the monster in the head before it could get closer. However, the noise attracted others. While some beetles were devouring the body of their kin, others charged in pursuit. Rescue came unexpectedly. A man, waving his arms, showed them the way. Reaching the church, they saw people in the windows throwing Molotov cocktails, setting the monsters on fire. They were led in and guided through a secret passage to another part of the building. There, they met a nun who was taking care of the survivors. Among them was Omar. Omar tried to convince the others that Juan and Tano were dangerous, but the nun ignored him. Instead, she led them to the roof, showing the ominous red lights in the sky, claiming the beetles came from there. Tano declared it was an alien invasion and tried to escape, but the nun stopped him. In the evening, the scouts returned with a small amount of supplies, but reported that they hadn't been able to go far. The bugs were everywhere. Tano proposed the idea that more intelligent beings might be controlling the bugs. Juan decided to escape and find his daughter. Omar noticed him, and to silence him, Juan grabbed him by the throat. Omar mentioned a certain Rengo, who supposedly knew Juan from the time of the Falklands War, but Juan didn't remember him. Omar also told him about a hidden tunnel on the border between the center and the outskirts of the city. Juan exited through the back door and made his way across the city rooftops. He saw the red light again and had another vision. Bugs marching toward an unknown destination. There was a dispute in the church about whether to leave or stay, with some afraid to leave. Upon his return, Juan reported that he had found a working truck. The decision was made. It was time to go before it was too late. As everyone gathered, Juan spoke with Rengo. He said he would stay with the nun to avoid holding the others back. Juan confessed his visions, describing scenes of destruction that reminded him of military battles, but Rengo had not experienced anything like it. The group cautiously crossed the street under the red light. A bug passed by, but it didn't notice them. Once they reached the outskirts, most hid in the bus, while two began to break down an old wall looking for the tunnel. Suddenly, a baby cried, drawing attention. Fortunately, the wall gave way, and everyone managed to hide. Juan stayed in the bus with the mother while she tried to calm the child. At that moment, the church bells rang. The nun and Rengo were distracting the bugs. When the creatures broke into the church, they poured gasoline inside and set it on fire, perishing in the flames. Meanwhile, the group made it to the other side and found the truck. As they tried to move it from the pile of metal, a bug emerged and dragged Tano away. One of the survivors threw a smoke grenade, and the creature retreated. Other bugs were approaching from the bridge. Juan opened fire while the others climbed into the truck. The monsters knocked over a road sign to get to them, but the truck was already moving. As they drove away, they saw the church engulfed in flames behind them. In a new vision, young Juan was fighting in the Falklands. After a powerful explosion, he lost consciousness and woke up the next morning in a trench full of dead comrades. Snow was falling, and a whistle could be heard. Crawling out, he saw an older version of himself. In the present, Tano, Juan, and Omar separated from the others to return to Tano's house. The rest headed for the military base. Inside the house, Juan was stunned to see Clara sleeping on Elena's lap, just as in his visions. The family was reunited warmly. Clara explained that she had come because she knew about his weekly card games. Soon, Roberto arrived with Benito's people. They had heard about the bugs. When Tano confirmed the rumors and said he was leaving, Roberto proposed a trade, their house on wheels in exchange for Tano's house and garage. He believed he could fight off the monsters. The deal was quickly made. When everyone was ready to leave, Tano noticed that Clara's yellow suit had come from his boat. On the way out of the city, they nearly collided with a deranged car. At the pier, they found that the water was gone, and the riverbed was a muddy swamp. However, a fisherman's bucket still held some live fish. Omar suggested heading to the camp, but Juan and Tano decided to go north first to look for water. If that didn't work out, they would reconsider the plan. Before leaving, Tano checked the boat. On the road, they came across the same crashed car. The family inside had been shot. Clara was awakened and asked where she had gotten the suit and mask, but she didn't remember anything. A few hours later, they arrived at a large shopping mall where people were taking shelter. They decided to stay the night. While everyone was settling in, Juan confessed to Lucas that Clara's return felt unreal to him. Lucas believed it was just stress. At dinner, people were talking and dancing, but Juan felt out of place. When a special boy approached Clara, she froze and then began clapping her hands. Her parents took her to the tent. Elena suggested going to the military camp. Perhaps they could help Clara there. But Juan reminded them that he couldn't go there. At that moment, Tano arrived. He hadn't found the boat, but he had discovered a ship's log with Clara's signature. Meanwhile, Lucas was looking for alcohol and heard strange sounds behind the wall. In the morning, the snow stopped, and people rejoiced at the sun. While everyone celebrated, Tano checked the compass and found that the poles had shifted. The south had become north. Then Anna noticed Lucas was gone. While Tano and Juan searched for him, a car pulled up. 3 masked figures got out and suddenly opened fire. Panic broke out, and people rushed inside. Juan and Tano engaged in the fight. Juan made a precise shot and killed one attacker. Another searched through the trash bin, found some teenagers, but walked past them. Juan hid and shot the third one, whose body fell through the window. Under the mask was a woman with a necklace, a mother of 3 children. Elena was helping the wounded, including that special boy. At this moment, Lucas returned with the military. He said he had found them on the highway. When Tano asked how he had gotten there, Lucas couldn't answer. Later, Tano checked the RV, which had been damaged in the shootout. All the survivors were evacuated in military trucks. While traveling along the highway, Lucas pointed to the place where the soldiers had picked him up. He didn't remember how he got there, and blamed everything on the alcohol he had drunk the day before. During the trip through the city, they noticed that the river had water again. Meanwhile, the third shooter had managed to escape. He crawled into the sewers, but the bugs didn't touch him. On the contrary, they parted as if they recognized him. Later, Juan had another vision. He was wandering through the mall and encountered his mother, whom he had once shot. She said that she still lived in his mind and asked him not to stop searching for her. When he woke up, he found himself at a military base where soldiers were teaching survivors how to shoot. One morning, the sergeant called Tano after learning that he was an engineer and asked him to repair the radio. But when Tano realized that he would have to do it in the city center, he angrily refused. Later, he told Juan that the military was planning to ram a train into the wall at the border and send a signal from the radio tower. Lucas was going to participate and said that it would help save many people. He spoke sharply, and his friends noticed that something was off with him. Meanwhile, new survivors arrived at the base, among them Roberto. He told Tano that Benito and his gang were dead. Juan suggested leaving for the island, but Tano and the wives were against it. The island could be unsafe, and Clara needed medical help. At night, Juan couldn't sleep and went out for a walk. He noticed that 2 people were following him. One of them turned out to be an engineer and told him that there was a station nearby. If they could restore it, they would be able to safely reach the center and send the signal. But they needed Tano to make it happen. The next morning, the teenagers held a farewell for the boy with special needs who had died. After that, Tano, Juan, Omar, Pablo, Inga, Lucas, and several others joined the soldiers. They crossed the river and found the railway tracks, then continued on foot. Military planes flew overhead. Upon reaching the station, the team immediately started repairing the train. While the soldiers were keeping watch, the others worked on preparations. When the train started moving, no one noticed the armed woman watching them from the water tower. Halfway there, Pablo and some of the soldiers got off to guard the border. Soon, the train approached a wall. The vibrations woke the bugs, but the team held steady. Juan began singing to encourage the others. The train crashed into a blockade of cars, causing a cloud of dust and smoke. Everyone cheered and coughed. In the city center, they got off with the battery, and the bugs didn't follow them. Wrecked planes lay nearby. The group split up. Some went to the tower, others to the planes. In the boxes they found rockets, and Inga found a map indicating the stadium. Suddenly, a boy appeared in the street. As they got closer, they saw a crowd of people with blank faces. At the tower, Tano set up the radio, and a soldier transmitted the message. The resistance is alive. All survivors, head to Campo de Mayo, where a safe haven awaits. The signal reached the base. Then the women saw the teenagers leaving in a car. The soldiers launched flare rockets confirming the departure. But the joy quickly turned into unease. A blue glow appeared from the stadium. Juan wanted to check, but the soldier reminded him that the group from the planes hadn't returned, and it was too risky. They stayed to wait. At the top of the tower, in the apartment, the team found maps and began playing cards, but Lucas was acting strange, forgetting his moves and getting angry. When they started teasing him, he snapped, stabbed Omar with a knife, and ran away. Juan and Tano chased him to the roof. There, Lucas began talking about an enemy intercepting radio signals and interfering with them. He was agitated, speaking incoherently, then jumped. Tano was in shock, but Juan urged him to move. Strange, jerky people were appearing on the street. They descended and joined the radio operator and Omar. At the entrance, the guards were unconscious. The group hid on the stairs. Outside, they saw someone familiar, but he screamed and gave them away. A chase began. Juan had to shoot to cover their retreat and close the gates. They soon reached the train and jumped inside just as the engineer started the engine. The pursuers raced after them, and only one managed to get close, but Juan shot him. During the ride, he realized that these people were behaving like the shooters at the shopping center. It was likely all staged. They had intentionally allowed the signal to be sent. Juan wanted to find out what was happening at the stadium. The engineer volunteered to go with him, and meanwhile, Tano was trained to drive the train. Juan couldn't shake the feeling that the engineer looked familiar. The rest of the team was supposed to return to the base to warn the others and help Omar, who had been wounded. As they passed through the ruined city, Juan and the engineer heard distant gunshots. While inspecting the area, they came across people, frozen in the park, as if in a trance, until trucks arrived. Bugs wandered peacefully around, and the people fired their weapons as though they were going through drills. Later, they entered an empty building, and Juan began experiencing visions again. The events of the past few days flashed before his eyes. When they stepped out onto the balcony, everything fell into place. Juan realized why the engineer seemed familiar, and he understood that this had all happened before. The events were repeating. Suddenly, a blue glow erupted in the gazebo, and an alien being emerged, the puppet master of this whole operation. It emitted a melody that suppressed the will and turned people into obedient agents. Among the crowd, Juan noticed the teenagers, and then he realized Clara had been under control from the very beginning.